Hello, Andre or Ondro. So what's the right pronunciation?
You said it both names or both variants correctly. It's Andre and Ondro.
Oh,
But some people were confused by the J at the end of my name, so I switched it to Ondro, which is probably easier to understand, and most people get it right.
but basically it's Andy, right?
It's a Slavic variant of Andy.
Ah, okay, cool. And the long tradition of the show is I ask my guest the very first time about his very first computer and the first kind of hello world, or what was your first line, how you started programming.
I started programming at, I think it was in primary school, even before high school. And the first programming language was something for children. I think it was Logo, a little turtle where you moved it forward and turned and then started to learn cycles and some functions. But then it followed with the real programming language, which was Pascal and soon C. So I learned both about roughly the same time at high school.
And which computer was it? Do you remember that?
At that time, I think I didn't own any computer, but at the school there was those 386 and 486, and we were really excited when they bought some Pentiums.
Wow! So this was actually when was it then? It was like 2000
1995, 96.
Okay, cool. And yeah, Logo, interesting. So I also took a look at Logo recently. There's even a version for the Mac, which is nicely documented, and you can do amazing. It can even speak, and it's really a nice language, or nice. It is interesting that it's still out there.
Yeah, it's good to teach children. There's also this new thing called Scratch, I think, which is also nice. So nowadays it's much easier to teach children and for children to learn with a cool programming language.
Or maybe
does some graphics.
Maybe it's harder because back then Logo was already something cool. You could relate to Tron or something. And right now, everyone has an iPad, tablet, or whatever, and everything already looks amazing. So with Scratch, it is like if it shows someone Scratch or Logo, they will say, "Okay, what is this?" Right?
That's true. I haven't taught children, but I know that there are people who focus on these, and they soon start using Lego Mindstorm and Minecraft, which children love, and
Minecraft
they're excited when
Minecraft is, I think, a real one. So
I think it's great. I just don't know how to programming, so I don't know if the programming language or the way to program it is easy for children, but probably it is.
With Minecraft, you actually have to do it, or you can do it with Java, so you can actually use jars and modify them. Probably Arun Gupta, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he wrote actually a book about that.
Oh, really?
Okay. So what was your... So you did something in Pascal, and Turbo Pascal, I assume. And
yes.
What happened then, after this?
After that, I switched high school, and I was surprised that they were teaching C, so I learned C. So that's why I learned both about the same time. And then I went to university where I used both. First with Delphi, and then I learned C++. And then soon I discovered Java, which was used as a programming language. Not directly, I didn't start with the Java course, but I started graphics course. And we had an assignment written in Java. Which was using some UIs, I think Swing, and we were supposed to build algorithms in this UI and connect different pieces together. And that's how I learned Java. At that time, the UI was very slow, so everybody thought that Java is just a toy language.
Yeah.
But I really liked the idea of virtual machine and abstracting the language from the hardware so that developers can focus on the logic and not on things you have to think about it in C and C++, like allocating and releasing memory and doing crazy stuff with pointers.
Destructors.
Yes, actually, yes.
Yeah.
With Java, it was quite hard to start at the beginning when you look at the hello world in Java, or at least back then. I think it still applies. You have a lot of mess around the hello world with the public static void main and imports and class.
C++, I remember, was almost the same. And the main difference was that the first argument, I think, in the args of the main was the program name. And in Java, it starts with the argument. So this was a minor difference between C++ and Java, as I remember.
Possibly. I don't remember in C++ how we started programs.
Before Java, what you've written with Pascal, so or C, what you did? There were some pet projects, or you had something?
I basically did just school assignments.
Okay. So why you are interested in programming then? Why you studied computer science?
I started to attend a primary school which was focused on mathematics. So that's why we started with Logo and programming, even at primary school. And then I naturally followed. I had and I still have a good friend who was really enthusiastic about programming. And he basically drew me to this because he wanted to attend a competition, which was team competition. He needed a partner. And I joined him, and I started to love it because it's a creative thing.
Okay, which competition was it?
I don't remember now. I think it was something called Zenith or something. It was, I think, local competition only in Slovakia.
Okay. Interesting. And then you started with Java, and as we... this was also my experience. Java was told to be a toy language because of the really bad performance and UI performance. But you like that, or what was your impression of Java?
Yeah, I wasn't really concerned that much because for learning the language, it was much easier than C++ and even C. C was good for lower level programming, but when I wanted to do some UI stuff, it was cool. It was quite hard to do. So I also learned Python, which was quite easy to use for doing some UI desktop applications. But for serious stuff and more complicated, I like Java because it was also usable on desktop, but also on the web for writing web applications. And that's where basically I saw the potential and where I started using it, because at that time writing web applications was already a big thing. And in the end, we wrote a team project at the end of the university, which was written in Java, and the UI was based on Google Web Toolkit. So it supported a browser, but it could also run standalone. We just wanted to make it run on both, and Java worked well with that.
And I assume you use NetBeans, right?
At that time, no. Actually.
Okay.
At the time, I was using Eclipse IDE because I thought it's more mature than NetBeans, and NetBeans at the time was slow because it was running on Swing, and that was slow. But that's not the biggest problem. I really didn't like how it worked and how it was tied to Ant build system, and it wasn't so flexible as Eclipse.
Yeah.
But only later I discovered that NetBeans has improved since then and had top quality support for Maven, which in the past years is the most widely used build system. And in Eclipse, Maven is still not really easy to work with.
Yeah. And so we share a common piece of history. So I also didn't got NetBeans at the beginning, so it had like strange things like you had to mount jars in order to put them to a class path, and it's really, I don't know, unusual way of developing. And I started with NetBeans 5. it was really great, and I really enjoyed that from then. So now, today and yesterday, I already have did some work with NetBeans 10 on JDK 11, and it also works nice.
Yeah, it does.
And okay, and then you did something with Google Web Toolkit, and for me, I really don't like Google Web Toolkit. So I mean, this is like technology from hell. You like that?
At that time, it was interesting because it was one of the first libraries or toolkits to support programming browser interface or like web application in Java alone. Mm-hmm. So you could write programs in Java and translate them to JavaScript and call methods on the server from the browser. Mm-hmm. But it was quite complicated, so I wouldn't continue with that. But it was a good experience to learn it and to use it for the project we had. It's just later I found out it's easier to use JSF and prime faces instead of Google Web Toolkit because it's still powerful and it doesn't go in the way. So you can use all the power of HTML and CSS without too much abstraction.
So and then you stick with Java. What were your next projects? So what you did then on the backend? I think you stick with the backend, right?
Yes, because I found a job at a financial institution, and
which institution?
Financial institution in a bank, and they were using Java and Java E, actually J2E back then. I called the last train of J2E, J2E in 1.4, which was where I was learning Java E. Or J2E, but soon after I joined the company, we were switching to Java E5.
Oh, very good.
And I discovered that dependency injection works there, sort of. So I like that. And I really saw a high potential in the next components, next development of Java E, because although we just jumped on Java E5, there was already Java E6 soon to be released. So I started learning what's coming because we were not on the most up-to-date application server. At that time, most application servers were keeping up with the latest Java E version very long after it was released.
Which server you used then?
That was at the time that was WebLogic, but I think most of the big application servers, WebSpheres and Tables, suffered from the same thing. They were very slow to adopt the latest Java E version. But I saw the progress in the API, and later I was using JBoss at another job, and I was using Java E6 and later Java E7. So I discovered that it's really nicely thought out API, and people who were working behind it were trying to improve the legacy of J2E a lot, and they did a great job. And there's still a lot of things to improve, as with any other framework, but the difference from between J2E and Java E6 was huge, and then it was improving even more.
And where were these projects? Were in Prague or?
They were in Prague, and for some time I came back to Slovakia, to my hometown, Nitra, and then came back to Prague. So it was into these two locations.
And you studied where?
I started in Prague because that's where I went to the university. Then lived for two years in Slovakia, and then came back to Prague.
Nitra is a really nice city. So last year I was for 2 days or 1 day. They wanted a microservice workshop, so I was in Nitra for 1 day. And really nice landscape. So I drove by the car from Bratislava to Nitra and back because it was harder to reach Nitra by plane. And
yes.
and really enjoyed the time.
It's the oldest city in Slovakia, in maybe even Central Europe.
Oh, cool. What interests me right now is, did you like actually J2E and Java, or was it like painful for you? You just did it because you got a job, or what's the story behind that?
Yeah, with J2E, I started just because of the job. I really didn't know. Like, I had mixed impression because I was just starting. I was junior, so I didn't know how other companies, other projects do with other things. I just started to learn what's the enterprise word even in the J2E, like what's enterprise about it. So I thought that enterprise means it needs to be complicated because it needs to take in considerations about transactions and reliability and lots of stuff. But still, it was really confusing and complicated to write a lot of code just to create an object or a component like EJB. And that was for that reason, I think there was a lot of code generation to simplify this, or it wasn't simpler, it was just faster to bootstrap.
Yeah,
but in the end,
Xstocklet, I guess you used back then. Right?
I think at that time I was really starting, so I really didn't know how all those things are named. But there was some XSLT and XML and mixed with Java code. But in the end, even the generated code, you had to read the code to understand what's going on. So it was just a small help.
But at one point of time with Java 5 or Java 6, you like that, or?
With Java E5, there was a huge difference because even with Java E5, you could just create an EJB with an object and use the add EJB annotation to inject it into another EJB. The only drawback was that the dependency injection worked only with EJBs. But you didn't have to. I think you didn't have to create those remote interfaces.
No, but you needed at least one interface. So in Java 5, I think you needed an interface.
I think so, but it was still a lot less code than with J2E.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and since Java 6, I think it fixed a lot. In Java 6, we just can inject classes, and we got CDI, and I'm perfectly happy with Java 6 and Java 7 and Java 8 are, from my point of view, minor improvements. But I'm really happy already with Java 6.
Yeah, that was the beginning of or the beginning was Java 5 because it was changing the thinking about the corporate framework, and then Java E6 got it well from the beginning.
Yeah. And this was 13 years ago. I think Java 5 was around 2005, 2006. And and people still remember.
True, but to my company, to my project, it got around 2010 or so. So you can see that it still took a long time to adopt all these technologies in the enterprise.
And so you did the financial job. What you did afterwards? Because right now you are working with Payara. So what happened between?
Oh, so I had 3 or 4 jobs. All of them were in financial institutions. But I was like, when I had a daughter, I had a lot of time when I could, I felt bored sometimes when I had to take care of the child. So I was listening to podcasts and trying to do something beyond the regular work. And even during the work, when in financial industry, you had some boring days when you have to wait for other teams to give you some task. So sometimes you have a lot of work, sometimes you have almost no work at all. And in those spaces, I try to learn, try to watch videos, and try to follow what's new on the internet. So I try to learn the new stuff and explore what's cool. And then I got to a conference in Prague, where it was the first and probably the last one, which I paid by myself, an entrance fee. And people around me were just asking me, why you really paid this money to go to the conference? And I said, yeah, I want to learn what's new and meet the people who talk about these things. And I discovered Twitter at that time, and Twitter is not really widely used in Czech Republic or Slovakia. People generally don't use it. But at the conference, I saw that everybody used that. Every speaker used it. So it was like 4 or 5 years ago. And then I discovered this Pyra. I think somebody told me about this project in one of my jobs. Or actually, I got an invitation to change job. I got an offer to change job in Nitra, but at that time I was moving to Prague, so so they offered me to train their team just for 2 weeks, and that was basically how I started training people. Occasionally, it's not my primary thing to do, but sometimes I train other teams. And at that time, one of the team members told me about Pyra. He showed me this, and then I started to follow Pyra on Twitter. And after 1 year or so, I saw that there is this opportunity, and I really liked it to change. I took the challenge of changing my job from developer to being something else at Pyra. And do with something else from the other perspective, not from the user perspective, but from the provider or vendor perspective, because I really liked writing frameworks and creating tools for other people to use. And after a year after that colleague told me about Pyra, I came back to train the team again. And I told him that I'm working for Pyra. So that's the story.
When was it? So when you started with Pyra?
It's roughly it will be 3 years in March.
Okay.
So almost 3 years.
Because I just noticed that there is a new kid on the block called Ondro, and delivers talks about reactive and microservices. And I always wanted to attend your talk, but never managed to do this. And even what I recognized is you were at WJAX in Munich, and I was also in Munich at the same time, and I didn't manage to to listen to your talk. I say, okay, what I can do, I can invite you to a podcast and then ask you about things, what you are actually doing. What are you doing at Pyra exactly? So are you the server hacker, or what's your job at Pyra?
Yeah, I said that it was a challenge for me to change my job. So I'm not now a full-time developer. I used to be a Java EE developer. Now I'm not a developer almost at all. It's at Pyra. It doesn't mean that I don't do programming, but I don't do production programming or product programming. I support customers, and mostly when they have issues, but sometimes when I teach them or train them when they have problems with their application, or we discover they have some issues in the application, and I explain them how they can improve their application. And that takes about half of the time of my job, and the other half is I try to work with the community and create stuff for the community. Go to the conferences, talk about mostly Java, Jakarta EE, microprofile things. So a bit of evangelism or developer relationships. I don't have a term for that because it's not in my.
I would call it exciting job, right? So you can.
It's exciting for me because I work with customers, I work with people in the community, with users, with fans, and I'm visible, so I can even connect people I already know, and I know that I should meet or I can enable some people to do stuff. And I'm also, it's not part of my job, but I'm also helping to run a Java user group in Prague.
Oh.
So that's also another way how I can enable things to happen and connect people. So I really love doing this.
Okay, cool. There never was a Java user group in Prague, so I always wondered, is there something? So like Prague was really quiet.
Yeah, we don't have much time for that because I'm quite busy, and the other two people running the group are also busy. But we have monthly meetings.
Okay.
If we can get speakers. Most of the speakers are local. Mm-hmm. But I think I asked you to come to to Prague like 2 years ago, but at the time we were really busy, and I think you were all busy.
Yeah, all but we can do this. So Prague for me is not a big deal. So there is a flight, and even by car is doable. So we should talk again. So if you have a slot, we can do it. So Prague would work.
Okay.
But it should be, it will be probably a Java related topic.
Yeah, sure.
And okay, so we covered lots of ground. And are you aware of SunGrid? You heard it before?
No, I haven't heard.
It was before Oracle acquired Sun, so a long time ago, and I think even 3 years before. So I think it was around 2000, I would say 6 or 7, something like this. And what happened at Java 1 conference? Sun announced like they have like Sun Cloud, they call it SunGrid. And I said, hey, cool, this is really interesting, because what I assumed what will happen is that you can just, create a jar and upload the jar on application server or somewhere, and then you can focus on business logic, and then you're ready to go. And this was like terrible technology, even worse than GWT. So you had do some packaging and deployment and whatever. That was like huge effort, to ship one function or one main method to the cloud. And now we have Microsoft Cloud and Google Cloud, and we have AWS and Oracle's. And what really wonders me, the whole conversation we had so far, as I take a look, for instance, at the Google Cloud. And so you ship your business logic, and then you have a couple of singletons, and the singletons, fetch their resources. And it is like programming 15 years ago. So like, we had Java code, and we built some singletons factories to pull some services. And what I wondered was always, if I had a cloud, what I would do is, like if you take a look at the application servers, right? Let's we are at Payara, just take the Payara. It is just the application server could already run in the cloud. I wouldn't be interested at all in the application server. And my idea would be, just to have a ThinWAR with the business logic, just upload it per SCP or whatever to the cloud, and then probably have some proprietary, a little bit JSON descriptors, which say I need a database or whatever, like a staging tool, like in Kubernetes. So you need the key value pairs, the staging environment. And then I would do whatever I can injectable. So I could say, let's say, inject at NoSQL database, inject whatever. And I would just inject the interfaces or classes. And this would be the Cloud 2.0. This would be extremely productive. This would be, very fast, because I just ship a minimalistic war. And this does not happen. So I ask myself, why not? Instead, I see, serverless and function and lots of overhead and packaging again. It's like, who is interested in this again? So you were in the Xdocker timeframe, I was there. And now we have exactly the same, again with the clouds. And what I saw is a tweet from you, like serverless wars, and it's like, we have to talk. And it is really hard, hard to do it via email, so I wanted to do it via podcast. So what is your idea behind the serverless and wars?
Yeah, hearing you describing all that you said is very similar to what I imagine. Like I thought myself, like people know about the term serverless. Not so many people know what it means. But basically, when I studied how this is done, or what serverless means, especially in Amazon, which popularized it, it's just pieces of code here and there, and gluing them together to create an application, and then the infrastructure to run them individually, scale them individually. But I always try to map things which I see to the standards, if the existing standards can cover them, and how they match to existing technology. And to me, it seems that in Java EE, it's very close to REST services, which are basically methods. For every REST request. You have a method which you call and it returns something, and it's very similar to functions in Amazon Lambda. It's just a different API. And even when we come back in the time, you mentioned SunGrid or something like that. I haven't heard about it, but I remember the first cloud I think that I know of was Google App Platform. And it wasn't really cloud like we know today, but it was an application platform that runs in the cloud. But what that was cool at that time. But what I didn't like about it, it offered its own APIs, and it wasn't possible to just create an application and just later decide to run it in the Google App Platform. You have to design the application to run in their cloud, and then it couldn't run anywhere else. So I wasn't really so excited about this. But then the history confirmed my concerns, and people started using Docker, and all the cloud vendors started to support Docker. And Docker is kind of de facto standard of packaging applications, and you can package any application in Docker and run it locally and in the cloud. And then the same thing with Kubernetes. So it seems that people really, really create or support wide adoption of technologies in the cloud, it's necessary to create some standards which you can use in any cloud or even locally, so that you don't have to think about these technologies when you create your application. And with running Java in the cloud, it should be the same thing. You can create Java EE application just running on your application server on your computer, but then why not deploy just WAR file on the clouds as if it was serverless cloud, just not thinking about how the server is configured, how it which is the type of the server, and just deploy the WAR file on the server. And if you need to have more services, you can bundle them in one WAR file, or have different WARs for different services, or let's say functions, whatever. But just use standard packaging technology, standard API, which people already know, and make it easier to use in the cloud and run in the cloud. So.
But you are even one step further. For me, it will be the first step, just increase the usability or developer ergonomics or developer experience. So it doesn't even have to be, a standard. So what I just thought about is, before I would create a singleton and expect my developers to, instantiate the singleton, fetch, the NoSQL data store or Kafka queue or whatever, we could just make it injectable. And the next step would be, let's say we are using Payara. So we could create a Docker super image, let's say Payara Google Cloud image. And this Payara Google Cloud image would already be in the private Google registry. And I would just inherit from that, add my WAR to it. And I would need just the Google API, which will comprise all the interfaces with the proprietary Google stuff, which are injectable. And then in my source code, I can just say, add inject, let's say the proprietary NoSQL store, and this would improve my productivity a lot. And this is like, it doesn't happen. And I see, why not? Because this is so easy to implement. And we already did it in proprietary projects on OpenShift, which worked similarly. This was really another big deal. You know what I mean? So this is make a little bit more, one step further. And then, of course, we could write like multi-cloud SQL store abstraction, like JNoSQL from Jakarta E. So we could use it later, but this is not even required at the first step.
I was thinking from a different perspective, from a developer perspective who just creates an application and wants to run it in the cloud. So I wasn't thinking about proprietary free features. For those, yeah, I would agree that there would need to be some thin layer to make it possible to inject proprietary cloud objects into the application. But I was just thinking of, I want to create a web application which doesn't use anything from the cloud, or maybe uses some messaging and data store, but they all can be mapped to JMS and JPA, and then just deploy to a cloud service that I can just configure later and hook up all the database to a data source and messaging to JMS. But
yeah, but this is almost solved, right? Because if we have Docker, we could just use stock Docker to Kubernetes, and we could package our Payara with the WAR and ship it. The only problem is I don't like to ship the Payara all the time. So what I would like to have, that there's like Payara service at Google Cloud where the Payara is already set up. So I just
exactly,
this is the first step, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. That the cloud vendor, cloud provider would run an application server, or not even one application server. It could run a pool of application servers so that you can scale your service. But this would be handled by the cloud, and you would just use it, maybe access some administration console or a remote API to deploy your application, and then pass the, let's say, JSON configuration file to the server, and that would be it. With the Docker, you still, if the Docker image is prepared by somebody else for you, that's maybe one of solution. But if it's not, you have to still think about if you choose Payara or WebLogic or whatever, and whatever system underneath, if it's Amazon Linux or Ubuntu or whatever.
But this shouldn't matter. So if we just focus on business logic, the WAR is just enough. The current application servers are, I would say, portable enough. So what I really do right now, I'm developing on Payara, OpenLiberty, and Whitefire at the same time. Just I'm curious whether the application works everywhere. And it just, my WAR is deployed constantly to the 3 servers, and there are no issues. So I think, if you think about, the Amazon Lambdas, this is the same story. You just, create your Java stuff and you ship it to cloud, and you not care about the Linux or whatever you have, right?
Yes, that's true. So your concern is to integrate the vendor stuff into the application in a seamless and easy to use way, right?
It would be 2 steps for me. The first step is that, let's say, a vendor could, or a cloud vendor, could support Java EE or Jakarta EE with microprofiles would be the best. Let's say Java EE Next or Jakarta EE with microprofile, and they can pick whatever server they like. So I wouldn't care about that. And but let's stick with Payara. You know Payara, I know Payara, so let's go with Payara. Let's say they will use Payara, but I wouldn't know that we have Payara. And let's say I would like to ship a very basic JAX-RS service. Then I would create a WAR file with the Java 8 RP dependency, just API dependency, just this, nothing else. And then it will ship via proprietary channel. There is nothing standardized right now. So upload the WAR to the cloud vendor. The cloud vendor would create the a sub image of the Docker, standard image they have. What, by the way, happens in private cloud all the time in my projects. So there is this, we do it all the time. So there's nothing new. And then you will be ultra productive because you don't have to fiddle with the functions. The whole packaging format is solved. All Maven supports that out of the box. The only thing what you will have to do is just to upload the WAR. And this would be step 1, but this would be a huge improvement of usability, and this would be a lot easier to use than, for instance, Lambdas, right?
Right.
So, and then the next thing is, so the cloud vendors would like to sell something. So say, this Google Cloud would like to sell, let's say, the NoSQL data store. So in this particular case, they could do, if you like, we can make our stuff injectable. So you just say add inject our interface, and we inject your interface. This is just, you don't have to use, singletons, factories, constructors, just very thin and lean and productive programming model. And this could be easily achieved by extending Payara, Whitefire, or OpenLiberty and providing, produces functions. They would just hide the singleton. And then you can use, all the Google's cloud infrastructure in very productive way.
Mm-hmm. I see.
You know what I mean? And this is it doesn't happen. And I wonder why. Who cares about the old singleton and all the infrastructure, right? And the next thing is what I also see is a huge backlash for Lambdas. So I see lots of startups. If you start with Lambdas, what you have from the programming perspective, you get basically, a collection or set of command patterns. And so if you would do it, let's say, in plain Java, you will have, classes with or methods called do something with input parameter and return value. And you will have, to chain these functions. But in any more complex projects, you will end up having a lot of such commands. So we had it 10 years ago. This command was very popular, and lots of the projects struggled, to find out what actually happens behind the scenes. And with Lambda, it is even worse because the whole functions became distributed. So I would say Lambda is great as a replacement for message-driven beans, like doing something with the event stream, but it's, I think, a really, really terrible and general programming model. You cannot just implement, let's say, a mid-range application just with Lambdas because it is a really hard to maintain and hard to understand.
Yeah, I think the reason is that basically the difference between innovation and stability, and this is also in development of the cloud, where you see that cloud vendors want to innovate, provide something new for their users. They often don't think about backwards compatibility. You see at Amazon, a lot of services are created, then replaced by other services, and there are a lot of new changes. So it's not easy to follow what's going on with the Amazon infrastructure because you have hundreds of services, and sometimes the services compete. So they are for the same thing. They just do it differently. And with the Java EE approach or Jakarta EE, the approach is to try to find the ideal. That's the goal. It won't ever happen, but that's the goal, to find the best approach from all the approaches that were tried. So to provide only one approach that is already proven, and that takes time, and it's for a different audience. So Amazon with Lambda targets maybe startups or projects where they really need some solution for their pains, and there's nothing else and nothing proven. It's like when you need to attach something to a wall, and you just have a hammer and nail and it works, so you use it. But when somebody that discovers a screwdriver and you can screw something to a wall, but then also unscrew it and replace it. It's more flexible, but it takes time to develop these flexible and good things.
Well, it also begins to change. So last year, I don't know why, but lots of startups approached me to help them with with doing something, implementing their ideas. And if they showed them the Java EE application server, then they say, what is it? They had no idea about Java EE and all this stuff. And I just explained etijac, JAX-RS, and one class 3, and say you can go to database. Here's JSON, and they say, and that's all. So yeah, and they say, and what's about the clouds? Like, if you have this, we can run on Docker whenever you like. Everything was solved, and they were really delighted because before that, they wanted to have lambdas in NoSQL. They thought, in the clouds they have to use lambdas or serverless, and they have to use NoSQL. And they showed me their code, and their code was like, no kidding, it was like 2,000 lines of code of infrastructure. And they wanted even introduce more code. And what we have right now is a ThinWAR. And this is what you are saying with the. My point is, done right, Java EE would be more productive and more easy to understand. So this is what my idea would be, and the Jakarta is the next step. So that we'll find a common abstractions from all the clouds, and this is a little bit against innovation because it's really hard to coordinate all the clouds. But the first step would be to rethink who is in charge of the application server. if I have to configure the application server on my side, I'm not serverless. The application server should be hidden in the cloud. So I'm just, pushing the wars. And this was how OpenShift started with the source to image, and we could point to a Git repository, and it will build everything in the cloud and create a war. But this building everything in the cloud goes too far. I would rely at the war first, and this would be like lambdas on steroids, or lambda easy to understand.
Yes, yeah, I agree that Amazon did a good thing to popularize this idea. Maybe it's not for every project, but it's one solution for some projects. And goes further than microservices. So I saw a project where it made sense, not build a whole solution, but maybe only some components in Lambda and serverless architecture, because there are obvious architectural benefits. But the same thing can be done with more standard tools. It's just you know it yourself. When you try to prototype something, you don't think about purity of the code or if the code will live long. You just try to do something that works, and if it doesn't work, then you throw it away. And if it does, then there's time to improve. So that's what Amazon is doing. Although I don't think that they are the company that is thinking about standards, at least right now. So maybe if other players in the field would force them to do so because they cooperate, then they would.
Yeah, I think what they don't see is the added business value. If they would introduce something like war packaging, they could, get more developers because of standardization. This is what they don't see. I don't like, the standardization for the sake of standardization, rather than using standardization to be more productive and have simple applications. This is my idea,
Yes, I believe that there's a value in that. It's just I think they are targeting probably different users who want to be more progressive and use the modern technology.
Yeah. They don't like the boring proven stuff. This is the truth.
Yes, and maybe they're focusing more on standards, and currently Spring is quite a big deal also. So you can use Spring with Java EE, but also outside of Java EE. So they just support whatever is on the market, and there's not only Java anymore. There are things written in JavaScript, even on the server and in other languages. So these vendors would have to focus on Java and the subset of Java, which is Jakarta EE, and they're probably not so interested. So I believe there has to be some vendor who has a strong relationship with Java and Jakarta EE.
Yeah. But wait a second. For instance, Google Cloud, you have the Google Cloud endpoints, and this is basically a JAX-RS resource, or they already have it. Or if you go, to Amazon, they also support Java. So what I'm talking about is just from their perspective. If they support Java, then they could just a little bit more, syntactic sugar to make it really productive. This is what I'm talking about. Not like they should, replace everything with Java, rather than if they have already Java.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's just maybe somebody else has to show them how to do that, because I don't think that Amazon cares so much about enterprise Java. They're just okay with supporting Java and let other people do whatever they want to do. Maybe vendors like IBM or Red Hat or even maybe Google could show how to do this. Oh yeah, Microsoft too.
Yeah. So, and what I forgot to mention, I completely forgot before the conversation, it was in December, so a few weeks ago, what I implemented, and I've completely forgot to announce that, is the Payara 5 S2I builder for OpenShift. So this is my GitHub account, so if you like, take a look on this. And what this thing does is it inherits from a prepared Payara Docker image, and it uses the Payara commands. So this is like the pre-boot commands to configure the Payara, And then you have your Payara in the cloud. And what only happens is what I said right now with the Payara commands. You can say I need a data source and so forth. What I also did, I prepared one folder for the JDBC drivers, and you are shipping one war with the driver and a text file, and it works perfectly in all private clouds. And so the effort was like, I think 3 days of. I'm still not satisfied. I will find some time to have the builds are not even incremental, so it builds everything from scratch, and the whole shipment of Payara takes about, I would say, 5 to 10 seconds. And this is based on this on and runs on OpenShift. It could run in whatever cloud you have, which are Docker based. So I did it for myself and also for a company, and I asked myself why it doesn't happen for the clouds. And I saw your tweet, so I wanted to have conversation with you first. And now it's documented, so we can go now with the podcast to a cloud vendor and say, hey, listen to it. There are some ideas where you can improve and probably get more customers. You shouldn't forget there are lots of WARs projects out there. And I think some of project would be really happy just to ship their stuff directly to the cloud without any repackaging, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'll have a look at it, and I think it's definitely useful for promoting this, or like showing people what's possible with the current technology and inspire cloud vendors what can be improved if they support it. And I believe that cloud vendors are already looking at these options. They are just in the R&D phase where they evaluate existing possibilities. I know that some cloud vendors are even exploring microprofile and support for it.
Exactly.
So I think in the upcoming months or at most years, we will see some progress there, even from the cloud vendors. Mm-hmm. But it's good to have both directions from the users to use whatever is already possible with Docker, and also from vendors to explore what they can do more to support this.
Mm-hmm. I misuse you a little bit to present my idea. So, what was your diff? What you see differently, or what were the idea behind your tweet? I will put it in the show notes.
Actually, I'm pretty surprised that our ideas are not so much different. It's just my focus is different. My focus is on just getting things run on this in the cloud without setting up an application server and too much configuration. So I'm thinking about creating an alternative, or how an alternative based on Jakarta E can be created compared to what's already offered by Amazon Lambda. Mm-hmm. And there are still a lot of things in Amazon Lambda. I'm not an expert there, but I think that you have to create a lot of configuration, how to tie all those functions together, how to route them from one to the other, and configure them from inputs and outputs. So this is still beyond the simple functions, and I think people underestimate it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just create a lot of functions, but you have to also manage them somehow. And with Java technologies, it will be a lot simpler, because first, most Java developers would be familiar with the API. There are a lot of resources there, and already a lot of applications using it. And I think that all the other aspects could be also specified in a similar way that follows the principles of Jakarta E. And not just vendor-specific things here and there, and a lot of spaghetti configuration.
Yeah.
To manage services.
And per accident, what the application server did right was the deployment model. And why that? Because with this clear separation between the application server and the business logic with the war, you can create a super image very easily, where it's, for instance, it will comprise Payara full, and then you can inherit from the Docker image or the container image and have, the war. And with that, you are basically serverless. But if I would, ship the application server with the war, first this is slower, and then why I should do this, and it's also interesting. At the AirHacks last weeks, last week, the last AirHacks in December, there was one attendee who cared a lot about security, and what he told me is that they had never issues with ThinWARs because in the whole security pipeline, the ThinWAR was scanned, but there were no dependencies inside, so there were never security issues. And they try to use Überjar and Superjars, and there are lots of critical issues they have to deal with because the whole infrastructure was shipped over and over again with the war. And the reason why they use Java E is because the war was empty, and the application servers were hardened by the operations, and they were already in the private registry. So just pulled the application server, which was already approved, and didn't have to recheck the application server over and over again. This was a really compelling story, which I never thought about. In my project, we just separate that because of speed. If my war is small, deployment is faster, right?
And one important thing is also that you can let somebody else take care of security of the application server and the system. Because if there's some patch release, you don't have to think about it. Your cloud, or like previously operations, but now it would be cloud, who would patch the server and the system, and you don't need to think about it. Everything is safe.
Yeah, and cool story. Is actually fault of your company. One of my clients had an issue with Payara, and they pay for support, and they reported issue to you, and you, the Payara guys, provided the patch very fast, and you asked constantly my client, does it work? Does it work? And the client had no time to test, and they say you are delivering the patches faster than they actually retest everything. So it was a funny story. So absolutely. So if the vendor provide your patches, you have a clear separation between the runtime environment and the business logic. And if you think about this more deeply, this is already serverless. The only thing is, in a private cloud, you would run your server by yourself. But if the server would be in the cloud, there is no visible server. You have just your JAX-OS endpoint and your business logic. And for me, there is no conceptual difference to Lambda.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely agree.
Yeah. So boring conversation. We need someone who doesn't agree. So like say, oh, Java is bloated or whatever. And,
yeah, we could have that discussion too, and maybe there we would have some disagreements. But here, I think our views are similar. It's just we learned from each other because we have different perspective. And yeah, we could talk about not why we should support Java E or Jakarta E in the cloud, because many people think it's dying and nobody's using it. But the reason is, one of the reasons is that Java E is becoming more open within Eclipse with Jakarta E, and there's already microprofile project which combines effort of different people and companies, not only traditionally related to Java E. So the whole enterprise Java ecosystem is opening up, and I believe that now even the cloud vendors and other companies in the ecosystem are looking what's going on. Some of them are already participating in the discussions.
Yeah.
So I hope to see some cloud vendors participate in Jakarta E and with the motivation of using it in their services and supporting it in their services directly, not only supporting running an application server, but already providing their services with the Jakarta E APIs.
Exactly. Yeah, this would be great. So where are you located right now? Where are you talking from? Are you still in Prague? Or
Yes, I'm in Prague now.
Okay, I thought, but you are working for Payara, right?
Yes, but I'm working remotely.
Cool.
A lot of our company has remote workers.
So we have to schedule really a Java user group meeting in Prague, and so we could talk again about that. And can you talk about more exciting Payara features, or what you're working on, or if it's?
We're working on some things that I can't tell.
Okay,
but inside the server, I can tell that we are constantly improving Payara to work better and better in Docker and the cloud, and improving monitoring. That's our main goal. And in the future, there's nothing really like what I would like a feature that I would can think about, but we are trying to adopt fast all that's on the market. So if there's microprofile version, we try to adopt it in the next PyR release, so you can see the history there. Most of the microprofile versions were immediately supported in the subsequent PyR release. And well, what was there?
Have you looked at Graal VM?
Yes, I know about it, but since that you mentioned Graal VM, I realized that we're working on putting a lot of effort now into supporting JDK 11. So that's basically one of the biggest things now. We're not there yet, but maybe 80% there. It's just we still don't support it because we're not sure it runs 100%. But that's one of the features we are adding to PyR 5. And with Graal VM, maybe we'll look at it later after we support JDK 11.
What is interesting, Graal VM, what would be really interesting is, but this is hard work, is the cross-compilation to native.
Yes, that one is really interesting. It's just there are some issues that are already being solved. I discussed with other people from Oracle, because a lot of people who work on these technologies are in Prague, actually. So I know some of them in person and meet them at conferences. And they are working on supporting some reflection stuff in the native binary, because it's not straightforward.
Exactly.
Currently, you have to do something during compilation to instruct Graal VM to keep references to the reflection or objects that can be discovered by reflection. But since this is already being worked on, it can be supported or it can be used with Java EE too. So yeah, I think we'll have a look at it during the year, and maybe we'll add support to Graal VM.
Yeah, it would be interesting. So thank you. Where people can find you on the internet? So.
Yep. You can find me. The people can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Ondro Meich, which is the first three letters of my last name. And I also have a web page, which is ondro.ingenia.eu, which is like ingenious, ingenia.
Cool.
And that's where all references to all my other profiles are: Twitter, Facebook, GitHub, and all the things.
Cool. Then we should stay in touch, and I would like to invite you, in a few months and talk about, the progress or something interesting. Let's see what we can do. So we don't have to introduce ourselves, again about, logo programming languages. Just stick with serverless and the productive stuff.
Okay.
So thank you a lot.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Bye.